Hey all, this is my presentation for Module 12, Tort Liability. Definition of a tort, so what is it? Our book that we're reading together is A Teacher's Pocket Guide to School Law by Essex. He states that a tort is an actionable or civil wrong committed against one person by another that is independent of contract. I wanted to explore that a little bit more, so I looked it up on dictionary.com, and it states that a tort is a wrongful act, not including a breach of contract or trust, that results in injury to another person, property, reputation, or the like, and for which the injured party is entitled to compensation. If you continue reading Essex's text, it states that there's two different types of torts. There's an intentional tort and an unintentional tort. An intentional tort is a deliberate act against another person. This is knowingly knowing what you're doing and purposely hurting someone else. This could be an assault, battery, libel, slander, defamation, but it does require proof of intent. If you are suing someone for an intentional tort, you have to be able to prove that they did it on purpose. An unintentional tort is a wrong perpetrated by someone who fails to exercise that degree of care in doing what is otherwise permissible. That is someone who acts negligently. This is what we'll find a little bit more of in the 5 cases that I found for schools, because teachers in most cases are not going to commit an intentional tort, but if it does happen, it's vast majority of the time it is an unintentional tort, and this does not require proof of intent because obviously they're not doing it on purpose. They are just not supervising when they should be normally in this case. The 5 tort cases that I've looked into. Number 1 was Johnson versus the school district of Millard. Number 2 is Mitchell versus Cedar Rapids Community School District. Number 3 was Mosley versus Portland Public School District. Number 4 was Hopkins versus Spring Independent School District. And number 5 was Brahatsek versus Millard School District. The first one, let's get into these, is Johnson versus the Millard School District. Overview of this is in 1993, a boy named Robbie Johnson was in his music class. His teacher, Nancy Patton, was instructing the students on the song London Bridges. Most of you probably know this song, but if not, it's like London Bridges falling down, falling down, falling down. Okay, and then as you can see in the bottom picture, you have 2 students that will hold their arms together, and then the line of students runs under the bridge. And then at the end of the song, the students grab whoever happens to be underneath them, and so their arms are now normally around the student's waist. And then they sing the song again, and they rock the student back and forth in their arms. Well, after instructing the students on how to play that game, the teacher, Nancy Patton, turned to write on the blackboard. During this time, Robbie Johnson was accidentally thrown head first into a bookcase. As those students were rocking him back and forth, he actually broke through their arms and went head first into a bookcase. He actually split his head open and had to receive 50 stitches. And I was like, 50, that's a lot. So I was looking into it a little bit more, and it's because he gashed open his head. It was a big gash, and it went all the way down to the bone, and he tore muscles and things. And so there was like multiple layers of stitches. Nancy Patton was actually found negligent, and the Johnson family was rewarded $1,226.10 for medical expenses, and $15,000 for permanent disfigurement, and $5,000 for pain and suffering because of the fact that she had turned her back, and this was the first round, and she had just told them how to do it and hadn't specifically showed them and then supervised them for the first couple of rounds. It was the very first round that this happened. So reactive measures to this case. Make sure that London Bridges is taken out of the music curriculum, and physical games such as this are not played on school property unless it's like for sports or for PE. And it just needs to be supervised. So I'd send Nancy Patton to a train on supervising students so that this doesn't happen again, and making sure that we are supervising students. Even if you gave them instructions, you should be watching them, especially with an activity like this. Proactive measures. I would have continuing staff development on proper supervision of the students, as well as what is acceptable for contact activities in a normal classroom. If it's not needed, you don't need to have contact activities in your class. You could use a different song to teach what you needed to teach instead of London Bridges, and that's what it should have been done. Professional ethics, just in general for all teachers. Teachers must create a safe learning environment and have students participate in activities that are safe and under supervision. As a teacher, it is your job to keep your students safe. And if you are having activities where students are going to be able to get hurt, you should look into seeing if you can change that out for something else or if you're required to. The second case that I looked into was Mitchell versus the Cedar Rapids Community School District. Overview of this is a 14-year-old student. They just named her DE, was a special education student at Kennedy High School. That's important, is she's 14 and she's a SPED student. During the school year, Miss Bidenbach, who was her special education teacher, actually witnessed DE kissing another student. This other student was a senior in high school boy and much older. And Miss Bidenbach did not report that she had caught them kissing. On October 26th, 2007, DE and this other older student actually played hooky and checked out of school early without permission. She was marked in her later classes as absent, but it was not reported and parents weren't called or nothing was done because she wasn't in class. They left together and actually went to a friend's house. The friend was home, and he ended up raping. The older student raped the DE in the student's garage while that other student shot her with a BB gun. DE's absence from class was not reported. Kennedy High School was found 70% guilty because of not reporting that they had a student missing and not reporting that they had actually seen physical contact earlier. But DE was held 30% responsible because she had chosen to leave school herself. So reactive measures. New policies must be made on absences in class would be created and enforced so all students are accounted for at all times. If a student is absent, something needs to happen. Either, in this case, in all cases, it's an unexcused absence, call home. Hey, where's the student at? Which is what most schools do. Physical contact of any kind between students would have to be reported. If you caught students kissing, it needed to be reported somewhere so that parents knew this was happening at school. Proactive measures. Attendance would be taken every class period, and any unexcused absence would be reported and guardians would be notified. Okay, I know my school does that now. We have to take attendance every single class period, and if a student's not there, if they find out has he been there all day, if he has not been there all day, they call home. If they are, we got to figure out where is that student, why aren't they in class, and school should be following that. Professional ethics for all teachers. Teachers should know where their students are at all times. If a student is accounted for, if a student is not accounted for, protocol should be followed, and absence would definitely and should be reported. My third case is Mosley versus the Portland Public School District. On November 13th, 1987, 15-year-old Chrisetta Mosley was a student at Jefferson High School. During lunch, Chrisetta became involved in a fight with another student, Wanda Griffin. Griffin actually produced a box-cutting knife and stabbed Mosley several times. This actually happened in the hallway. They got in the fight in the cafeteria and moved it into the hallway. Even though there were security officers there at school, they were in the cafeteria. None of them were in the hallway when the fight happened. Mosley was stabbed in the face and chest and suffered permanent scarring as a result. The Portland School District was found not guilty, though, because the plaintiff was not able to support her theory of negligence. They had all the right people there. As it was a high school, these students were old enough to know what they were doing, and they moved it into the hallway so that they actually could have this fight. So the Portland School District was actually found not guilty. Reactive measures, though, I'd station security guards at the exits, or at least inside of them, and then make a new policy that students have to stay in the cafeteria during lunch periods. We have to have eyes on students at all times, and this would be the easiest way. Proactive measures. Pay teacher volunteers as an hourly wage to work lunch duty. More eyes in there. I know my school district does that. We can work a 30-minute lunch and get paid for it. It's not required because you're required to get a duty-free lunch, but if you're willing to get paid for it, the more eyes in there, the better. This will add to the amount of supervision that is on students during their lunch period. Professional ethics. All staff, that includes the security guards, should be trained on how to properly supervise the students at all times during the day, even those passing periods, in the hallways, and at lunch. Staff keep students under proper supervisions at all time. We should always have our eyes on our students. The fourth case that I chose to explore. This is Hopkins versus the Spring Independent School District. Overview. In 1987, Celeste Adeline Hopkins was a student at an elementary school in Spring Independent School District who suffered from cerebral palsy. Her mother alleged that the students were left unsupervised, and during that time, Celeste was pushed and suffered a head injury. She alleged that nothing was done medically for her daughter until much later that day when she arrived at her daycare center. The student was taken to the nurse and nothing was done. The student was having convulsions and there on the bus. And so they called ahead to the next school they were stopping at for the nurse. The nurse didn't show up, and so they took her all the way to the daycare before anything medically was done. 2 years later, Celeste's mother sued the school district, the bus supervisor, the principal, the school nurse, and the teacher, all of them, because they had not given medical attention to her daughter. She claimed the school's negligence in failing to provide adequate care dramatically decreased Celeste Adeline's life expectancy. They took her to the doctor, and her life expectancy was shortened, and she blamed the school district for it. Reactive measures. Put all involved staff members through training on how to assess these injuries and report them. They should be following protocol. Make sure the school medical personnel is present when needed. If there has to be a school nurse in every school at all times, and if they're requested to be somewhere, they should be there. Proactive measures. School-wide training for injuries. This training would include basic first aid, identifying head injuries, and proper protocol for reporting such injuries. I know in my school district, we have this every single year before school starts. And so if something like this happened, I would know what steps to take, and these teachers and principal and nurses should have as well. Professional ethics. Teachers and staff members are focused on the well-being of all students. Teachers and staff are trained on how to deal with basic injuries and the correct protocol for reporting all injuries. And my last one is Brahatsek versus the Millard School District. A 9th grade student named David was injured on April 3rd, 1974. During his PE class at Millard Central Junior High School, David was actually hit in the head by a student named Mark with a golf club. He was actually knocked unconscious, and he stayed unconscious for 2 days until he actually died. The day of the incident, the boys' actual PE teacher was not there, and they had their student teacher teaching. The girls' actual PE teacher was in the gym at the same time, and the reason they were in the gym is because it was raining outside, and so they had to. David was actually not even at class the day before when instructions were given, and so he was just, not David, it was Mark was actually not at class, and he was the one swinging the golf club. He was not at class the day before when the instructions were given, so he went in there having no idea what to do. So David was the one that actually tried to teach him, and it was during this time that Mark swung and hit David in the class, or hit David in the head, which he ended up later dying from. So the Millard School District was found guilty of negligence, and David's parents were awarded $32,650 for his death. It's because that student teacher was actually in a different part of the gym watching another group of boys and was not even watching that group, so they were found guilty. Reactive measures. In the future, all golf classes must be given outside where students can spread out. If it's raining, push it off and do something else inside. Something like that is extremely dangerous in a small, closed quarters. Students will be under constant supervision if they are holding the club so that they are safe. They always need to be watched, so smaller groups with an instructor there. Proactive measures. PE teachers should have alternate assignments ready to go if there is inclement weather and the sport they are playing requires a lot of space, like golf. Students should then be instructed in small numbers while being supervised, and no one should be given a club if they haven't had these instructions. Professional ethics. Teachers should always be aware of any safety issues that might present themselves during any course and be flexible if weather makes our lesson plans impossible. I know that, and we're supposed to have different things. Hey, if this doesn't work, you just gotta be flexible and move on and change it up. And these PE teachers should have done this. These are my references in alphabetical order that I used for this. During this assignment, I feel like I learned a lot of what tort cases were, and how to be proactive instead of reactive would be better to keep our students safe.